Howdy, friends. Steve DePoe here with the Rose Realty team again with this week's real estate vlog for North Texas. This week, mistakes during closing. Before we get started, we ask you to go to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Let's Do Real Estate Texas. There's no charge, but you will be alerted to updates and changes to our series Spotlight on Community, Focus on Small Business, and of course, our weekly real estate updates on North Texas. Thank you. Let's get started. So our first mistake that we make during closing is rushing through documents. Hey, you know what? Read everything. When your real estate agent gives you information, or you get information from title, or a document from your attorney, read through it. At least browse through it. Understand what it is. There's a lot of documents there, and buying or selling a house is actually, your second biggest investment next to your kids. Okay. And so it's important stuff to read. It's important stuff to understand. When you sign these things, when you sign these closing documents, they become legal documents. Okay. And so you want to make sure that what you're signing is accurate and truthful. Okay. So we want to read through these documents to make sure we understand what they are. Now, I can help explain them to you. Anybody on our team can help explain it to you. Or you can actually go to the closing officer, and they can help explain it to you. Now, they're usually, hey, let's be honest, at closing, they're throwing you documents and you're just signing and you don't know what's going on. But you should read these documents before closing so you understand. Now, what title in the state of Texas, title says that the rule in Texas is that title will get you these documents, or at least a closing statement, or what we call a closing document, 3 days before closing. We do, as a buyer's agent, I do everything humanly possible to get you that document, those documents before closing. Doesn't always work out. Okay. But anyway, read through the documents. Don't just rush through them. Okay. That's number one. People pay too little attention to these documents. Like I said, it's the second biggest investment, or maybe the second most important thing, maybe the third most important thing in your life. Okay, next to choosing a spouse, having kids, and then buying a home. Okay, and so it's maybe the third most important thing in your life, and the second biggest investment in your life. Okay, don't just give it short shrift. Pay attention to the documents and read through them. Okay. What we have here is a failure to communicate. What people sometimes do is things change. They change things in their financial future or their history, and they don't let the correct people know. Give you an example. I had a couple I was working with. It was maybe their second home, maybe their third home, something like that. They had cash on hand. And what they did before closing was they paid off a car loan. Okay. Smart thing to do. That leaves more money for home improvements on a monthly basis. That makes the debt to income ratio better, et cetera, et cetera. But what happened is their financial situation, the financial portfolio, you may want to call it, changed. And then they started going to closing, and they were like, maybe 4 days from closing, the title officer ran the credit check. Oh, excuse me, the mortgage company ran the credit check, and suddenly, they find out they're down a certain amount of cash, and this car loan is gone. Okay, and so they had to explain that delayed closing for about 3 days. Okay, nothing wrong with that, but let everybody know what's going on. So you're going to pay off that car loan, or that student debt, or something like that. Make sure that you let your mortgage provider know what's going on, and also let your agent know what's going on, so that they can then communicate, maybe the title, the other agent, the buyer or the seller, depending on what side of the fence you're laying. Make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and we communicate. Okay. Using inconsistent versions of your name. Interesting. Okay. So my name is Stephen Ronald DePoe. Sometimes I use Steve DePoe. Sometimes I use Stephen R. DePoe. Sometimes I just use Stephen DePoe, and I've got probably like 1,000 official documents out there with different names on it. The important thing is this: when you start a mortgage or a loan process, use the same name. Okay, I'm not saying I'm going to use Joe Smith now, but when I start the documentation process, I use the same name. Okay, for the mortgage, so that's consistent throughout. And that's what you have to do, because you don't want to be starting the process with. And I actually made an error with one of my clients recently, where she was telling me her name was Anne, but that was actually not her first. That was actually not her first name. She uses her second name, and her first name, her first official legal name was something else. And so I had to kind of go back before closing, tell title, here's what's going on. We had to monkey around with a couple of documents. I had to create a couple of change documents and put it through. So let's make sure we use a consistent name throughout. That saves you time, that saves title time, that saves your agent time. Okay. Another issue is being in the dark about closing costs. Now, last week I did my vlog was on closing costs. Okay. Understand what the closing costs are all about. Understand how much they are. You'll get like I said, you should get a closing document within 3 days before closing, so you know what your commitment is. Understand whether you can write a check or you need a certified check. 99 times out of 100, you're going to need a certified check from your bank. Okay, not a personal check. If there's something that changes at closing, like, oh, the title company didn't realize that you had to pay this or that, they usually accept a personal check then. But usually when you're at closing and you've got to pay tens of thousands of dollars for closing, that's got to be a certified check. Understand what the closing costs are. And if you want to go back to some of my previous vlogs that talks about closing costs and those types of things, and it'll give you some ideas about what some of those costs are. And lastly, forgetting to line up the wire transfer. Now, look, as a buyer's agent, I want to have you sign several documents that say, "Watch out for wire fraud." Okay, so I'm gonna make you so scared, before closing, that you're not gonna wanna go to your ATM. But here's the truth. Okay, number one, there are people out there trying to steal our money all the time. Okay, and so when you get instructions from either title or from your bank about the wiring instructions, those are the official documents that you should use. Once you get them, double and triple check that those are accurate. But make sure that they're the accurate documents and accurate locations. Additionally, you have to set those things up. So if you're going to do a wire transfer instead of a certified check, you've got to communicate with your bank that they've got to wire the money to another bank, okay, for closing, to make sure it all works out. And that they have to make sure that your bank has to make sure that it's going to be at a certain time in a certain place and those kinds of things. Okay. Usually, what your bank should do is wire the money to title or to the other bank, to the seller's bank, actually before you start signing documents, so that when you sign your documents, you're funded, and the house becomes yours. But every situation is different. Okay. But what we're saying here is, don't forget to set up the wire transfer information so that it can be no muss, no fuss. Next week's topic: remodeling mistakes. This is actually a fun one. Okay. So hope you tune in next week for remodeling mistakes. This is Steve DePoe with the Rose Realty Team. I'm going to bounce.